At some point, everybody has to break down a complex topic for another person. The secret to doing this well is understanding how our brains learn new things and then repackaging information to make it as brain-friendly as possible. So in this video, I'm going to explain how our brains absorb information, the biggest mistake people make when explaining complex topics, and 4 questions you can ask yourself today that will dramatically boost how much people understand you. Learning about a topic is like building a brick wall. When we explain something, our responsibility is to give the audience small enough bricks that they can easily build meaning. This is how all knowledge gets built, with tiny pieces adding up to bigger pieces. And this is where we usually mess up. We present information as if the audience already has the content in their heads. For example, President Thomas Jefferson asked his personal secretary and aide-de-camp, Meriwether Lewis, who was joined by his friend, the seasoned soldier William Clark, to explore the land acquired in the Louisiana Purchase. In the wall-building metaphor, this sentence looks like this. The audience, who has no previous context, is suddenly told that the president asked for something, we don't know what, to a guy who we're suddenly given a lot of information about, who is joined by another guy who we get a lot of information about. Then at the very end, we're told that these 2 dudes have to explore some land acquired in a random purchase. That's 5 pieces of information we have to store in our head before we can even understand the sentence. When the audience tries to put this brick into the wall, pieces are likely to break off and they'll feel frustrated and confused. If we want the audience to understand something, we have to break the information down so it easily fits into the wall. And the first step is to set context. Every time we explain something, the audience needs to understand why things are happening. They need to know where we currently are and what goal we're trying to reach. Without that context, you're just handing people more and more bricks of knowledge without telling them what they're building. Here are the 3 formulas I use to present context. 1, you can present the goal and then the problem. For example, I want to gain muscle, but I don't know how to exercise. 2, you can present the situation and then the goal. I have a date next week and I really want to pick a nice restaurant. Or 3, you can present the thesis statement. Android is better than Apple for 5 reasons. With just 1 sentence, we've dramatically increased the amount of information our audience can remember. They know what's being built and they can put each piece of content in its proper place. Going back to the Lewis and Clark example, we can start the explanation with, President Thomas Jefferson acquired a massive amount of land in the Louisiana Purchase, but he had no clue what the land contained. To find out, he asked his secretary, Meriwether Lewis, to explore the area and report his findings. So now we know the context, we know the problem we're trying to solve, and we know why this guy Lewis is involved. We have a bedrock for the rest of the bricks to go on. When you're giving bricks to the audience, there's 2 things to keep in mind. Ideally, each brick will contain its own little chunk of information, and it will connect to the other bricks in the sequence. Going back to the original paragraph, we now have the context brick and we're ready for the Lewis and Clark bricks. Jefferson chose Lewis because of his previous experience as a woodsman and a soldier. Lewis, in turn, asked his friend William Clark to co-lead the expedition. Clark was also an experienced soldier and had led troops before. Now, there are no hard rules for how big or small a brick should be. It depends on your audience and the content. However, a good rule of thumb is this. The longer your sentences are and the more you need to build a chunk, the more likely it becomes that you could break down that information into smaller pieces. So, now let's get into the 4 questions you can ask yourself that will help you dramatically shrink the amount of content you're presenting. First, does your audience understand the goal? If your audience doesn't know what they're supposed to be learning, what your goal in explaining the subject is, or what the agents in the explanation are trying to accomplish, they will struggle to understand you. Number 2, can you make your sentences shorter or use less of them? As you're explaining something, just ask yourself, can I make this sentence shorter? This will help you trim the fat and gradually make your communication more clear and concise. Number 3, can I make this simpler? Doing things like removing adverbs and industry jargon and choosing simpler vocabulary and grammar structures can really help the audience understand you. For example, prehistoric people used stone tools is much easier to understand than the usage of stone tools was common among prehistoric tribes. Now for the final question. Will this information accomplish my goals? When we devote a lot of time to a topic, we tend to think every little detail is important. Usually this isn't true. Your audience comes in with their own goals and desires, and you peppering them with every subtle difference in meaning will only frustrate and confuse them. Adding useless details can also impede your own goals. For example, in my language classes, I want students to learn and be able to use new words. I also want to impress them with my vast knowledge of etymology and where different words come from. But the more time I devote to showing off, the less time they have to learn the new words, aka the real goal. If the extra information doesn't move a dial in the direction you want to go, and you're not hiding anything from the audience, you should skip it. If you keep these 4 questions in mind, I guarantee you'll get better at explaining complex concepts concepts. However, there's one other hack that you can use that will dramatically increase your audience's ability to understand you and make your explanation much more engaging. And you can check that out in this video here.